So today I took two trades, right? Two trades. First one was on UJ. This is the most profitable one. So I had to enter with a standard lot size. So this is a trade, right? This here on the H4 time frame, we're already pretty high, right? So obviously from point A to point B, we're technically already at this high point. So at this point in time, I was trying to actually break this down better based off of this chart. Okay, so off the H4, right? We were already pretty much at this high point, right? So at this point in time, I was just trying to see whether or not we were able to kind of either maintain this little bullish push, right? Continue to push, or we're going to kind of like drop, right? And fall and kind of retrace a bit more. So I had H4. I was breaking this down based off the H4, right? So I understood this candlestick analysis at this point. Here we weren't engulfing any type of candle, right? It was a bullish candle here, and this is kind of where I started to break things down, right? So obviously I can see this bearish candle here. We're kind of getting weak. Obviously push the upside, also getting weak, and then we kind of made this little down like retracement, like down push. But as you can see, it was also really weak, right? So I took that in consideration. I broke all this down based off of the M30, right? So on this M30 time frame, as you can see, coming back here, we never broke this level of support, right? So I was still pretty much bullish based off the fact that we had a higher low, that's higher high, and then this higher low here, obviously maintaining. This is still how I see it. It's still tested. It's still tested, right? Here on this point is also another higher low point as well. This is where I had, this is where I started to look for an entry right around this time, because at this point in time I understood we had a higher low, higher high, higher low. So based off the M30, all this was still pretty much bullish, and then we also made a lower high here. So I understood that once we made this lower high point, I was gonna see how it would kind of react, and at this point in time, we never really broke underneath this level now. So everything was still pretty much maintaining for the bullish push. So at this point in time, that's why that was my main reasoning based off my setup as to why I was even looking for buys to begin with. Initially, I had taken buys here. So this is my setup. This is my entry. This is where I start to look for buys, right? And this is actually a key point that I want to talk about, because this is the entry, right? This is pretty much, this push is where we kind of got into it. I got in based off the M5 or M1. What was it? It was actually the M1. It was actually right here, right? Based off the M1. So we actually had taken this entry here. It was this candle here. This bullish candle right here. That was my entry candle, right? As you can see from there, we ended up taking off, pushing off, right? In profit. It's something that I'm really actually good at, is always catching the move like right away. Something that I tend to always, every time I insert, to go into that direction and kind of land in positive. But then where I struggle with is obviously the retracement, stuff like this. And as you can see, I was in drawdown, right? All the way up, and then I went down. Mainly maintained this. I pretty much held because I understood that as long as we don't break any type of support, I knew we were good still for the push up. And as you guys can see here, this was that bullish push here, right? So this was still maintained, right? At the end of the day, how I look at things, M30, this is still being maintained. So this was actually really good on my part. is not folding, right? Here at this point, I was actually really thinking about exiting, but I didn't. So that was actually good. I understood that. So as long as we break a support, then that's when at that point I was able to exit. But even if we broke a support here, I would still probably would have held, and I probably shouldn't have. But I understood that this was that main key level that needed to be broken for basically all this to kind of just start to kind of kick into more of a downtrend. So all this was just a minor trend, right? So, but as you guys can see, this was kind of pushing down, and this was very, very light, right? Like the candles here were just not strong candles, very weak candles. So I knew that we had potential, especially coming up to this point down here. It was kind of overextended a little bit, but I knew overall, as long as we can maintain this level, we'll be good. And that's exactly what happened. I actually had made a video during this time right here saying that exact thing that I just said now, and obviously ended up playing out because I understood the structure, and I, like I said, maintained it, and at this point it ended up working out in my favor. But now let's go back to kind of how I was, what should have happened, right? Because I shouldn't have been in all this drawdown here, right? So one thing that I want to work on is understanding essentially my pushes and what I'm trying to get in, or what I'm entering in and need to look for once it starts to kind of play out, right? So at this point in time here, I think this is still a good buy at the end of the day. This is a solid buy opportunity for the main fact that this is obviously a higher low point here, and once again another higher low point, right? So this is higher than the previous low, so it's a good buy. But we should have exited the minute we seen, and again, I'm taking this with a grain of salt because I understand that, like, as this could still maintain, right, this little bullish push here, but that's something that I just gotta note, right? It's like, if I'm gonna exit, I'm gonna exit, and that's just something I gotta understand, right? I gotta know and fully understand that, yo, I'm exiting this trade, but essentially just like here, how it maintained structure, that's the same thing, right? It could have just easily maintained this point here and still kind of pushed up. So everything main thing is that we don't know what the market's gonna do, so I just gotta continue to react, right? Here, straight off the rip, we ended up projecting right away, right? So this automatically should have showed me that at the end of the day, this is not going to continue to keep on pushing, and we should exit it, right? We should exit it. This is one push. So one thing that, again, that I was really like stressing is that when this push here happened, right, essentially it's like M5 needs to break this higher low point, right? Because based off the M5, we have a lower high, lower low. This is now a lower high, right? So I need to see this pretty much become a higher high, break this lower high, and that would give me the confidence to obviously continue, right? This is what this push is based off of, essentially continuing even just this here, this little push, boom, higher low point. So cool. What we need to see is a higher high point, which we did not get, right? So because we did not get that, that is reasoning as to us understanding, like, you know what, we can probably see a deeper retracement, which ended up happening, as you can see here, right? A deeper retracement, because at the end of the day, we didn't make that higher high. We made a lower high point, a double top at that, right? And then we ended up pushing down, and then we broke what? Higher low point, lower low point, lower high point. So once again, still maintaining the bearish push here. This is a perfect setup, because once again, now it's coming back to kind of how we were looking at this, right? Lower high, lower low, and then we get a higher low. We have a lower high, right? So within this push, we need to see that higher high come into play, right? Come into action. That's exactly what happened. Higher low, and then we broke that. Now like this, where we kind of rejected it, closed engulfing all that, and it started to push down, we ended up pushing up. So this would have been that solid push for us to kind of continue this and pretty much stay in this trend all along, right? And then overall, we ended up breaking this lower high point here. That really shifts everything, which then becomes this big push here. This basically higher low, higher high, right? And becomes this candle. So this is pretty much the candle that we were in. So initially, this is where we kind of went positive. We were up about positive like 80 bucks or something like that. And once again, right, we ended up pushing all the way down, and then again, right, I was kind of, the confidence was kind of kicking in, so I was kind of like, should I hold this, should I not hold this? We ended up pushing all the way back, basically going, I think we went negative like $12 or something like that, right? But again, back to like negative, I was a negative, right? So I was kind of stressing again. I was understanding that, at this point in time, we don't have this, like, we're rejecting here. So I was kind of, and I knew it was around like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. So I was like, I knew volume wasn't, like, this was the volume. So anything after that would be kind of slow, which it kind of did, right? Once after we got this push, it kind of just slowly took its time. But even within this candle here, this is where I had, well, let's go back to it, right? Here, I had this push, right? And it was retracing back. And I knew that at the end of the day, as long as on lower time frames, structure is basically broken, like there's nothing to be, because we're not maintaining anything, nothing's in the way, right? We broke structure, which is this lower high point, then we're good for, obviously this is just a retracement, right? But once again, like I said, it was just this retracement here was, it was a lot for the fact that at this point in time, hold on, was it this? No, I think it was here that was up a little bit. Oh yeah, no, so it was this point, right? So I was up a little bit. I was up like 20 something bucks, right, or something like that. And then I lost that, went up again, went back in negative. So at this point in time, I was really kind of done at this point when I was at this point here. And that's why I ended up pushing, because again, here was that retracement. I think this is where the retracement was here. And it's just a candle, but at that point I was kind of like, we were kind of struggling to kind of break this point, right? So I was just like, I didn't know whether or not if I should hold. I was already in this for like almost 4 hours, so I was already kind of like obviously stressed out of the fact that we went bullish, went negative, went bullish, and then went back negative. So here, but again, at the end of the day, we ended up holding it, because at the end of the day, I told myself I understand structure, right? And as long as this candle here does not get engulfed, or we don't end up breaking any type of support, we should be fine. Like major levels of support, and we don't, right? We end up maintaining that all along here. Lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, and then we ended up breaking this here. So at that point, that was kind of where I took that. This should have been another solid entry. And again, all along this point, I really wanted to scale in, but again, I was just more, right now it's more about the consistency, right? I feel like I'm super close to being there, but there's times where stuff like this will obviously kick in, and then I'll just kind of not have that confidence in myself. So I really need to focus on just maintaining that confidence, right? And just kind of maintaining. But here was a good trade. Like again, we're just early, right? And we would have understood that by also like not seeing a lower high point being broken, or whatever the case may be. You know what I mean? Here, obviously, when we took this buy, that's the lower high did get broke, right? And got broken here and got broken here. So this is how we would understand whether or not the move is ready, right? And then from that, it's all about just being patient, right? And again, in this case, we only had a 23.6 pullback here, but just like this case, we could have pulled back a lot more, right? So this is something that we gotta also keep in mind. Keep in mind is that it can have these deep retracements, but as long as again structure is being maintained, then we have no reason to kind of exit, right? Especially after, like, this is stuff that you would want to obviously stay in. This is not, right? Like, look at this compared to this, completely different, right? And then obviously ended up maintaining, pushing, right? So then I pretty much exited right around here. Yeah, because again, there was already exhaustion in that M5 here, but I was on like M1, and we were kind of like making a lower low, but doji-ish type of thing. I don't know. I didn't want to be in it anymore, so I just exited out, right? Called it a day, and that was my little trade from there, right? another trade I took was on UCAD, and this is a little bit before TP, but this was that trade as well, right? And I'm glad we exited here, but I'm mad at the fact that we should have just exited when we hit TP, right? If I have a stop loss, if I have a take profit set, I need to just follow that, right? Because here, look at this here. We pretty much got the entry. We pretty much got the move, right? The move for all this, obviously, just started consolidating after all this. But the move we pretty much caught, right? It was this big bullish push. We hit all the way up here, almost 61, negative 61.8. Yeah, that was pretty much that. But again, I pretty much held this, and then I still held a little bit more, and I think I closed out like somewhere here. Still like in profit, barely anything, but again, that was that, right? I was up. I was on like, I don't know, 0.1. Yeah, 0.1. Within that 0.1, I pretty much up here was still like, I forgot which it was. I think it was like 50 something, 60 something. So again, that could have been a nice little profit, right, on top of the 110 that I made today. So again, this is kind of, and it's hard, right? It's hard because, like I said, stuff like this where it shows like a bunch of momentum going in one direction, then it's kind of like, damn, I should want to hold, right, and see how that candle closes, but then this is how it closes, right? So this is like a bad example. Well, this is a good example of what a bad situation is. And this is more essentially what a good situation, a bad situation still being good in a sense, right? It's kind of like even when we pushed up all that there, and we still ended up pretty much pushing down. But like I said, just structure-wise, based off M30, this is completely different from here. This is why I was a bit more hesitant, right? Because at least on M30, we're a bit more bullish. And then on UJ, we were bullish on here, so that's why I held this still. On here, we're still bearish. So this is what I was pretty much, so it's kind of different, right? Like here on M30, I was at least flowing with the overall trend in a sense. That's why also I wasn't that scared, because I was just like, I'm flowing with the trend, so I'm okay in a sense. Here, I'm flowing against the trend. I'm trying to create a new trend in a sense. So, and stuff like that is kind of where we just got to exit out. Yeah, so this is completely a miss by me. I should have just exited out the minute we got that touched and let everything else kind of play itself. But yeah, those were those two trades. So again, I just got to do better, right? I just got to still do better. I feel like I'm close. I'm so close. Like I said, this could have been easy. This could have been a really, really good day if I was a lot more disciplined, right? With this, even on UJ, here we ended up hitting TP. We closed before TP. That's probably a situation where we could have been a bit more patient as well. Then we could have hit. So again, this day could have been a lot better. But again, at the end of the day, we still took 2 wins. So it's not as bad, right? But things that I just want to continue to focus on is just understanding my entries, right? Understanding, don't be afraid to, like, I just can't be afraid of anything, right? Even just to exit out. If I exit out, then I exit out. Like, I gotta just stick to what I know, and if it doesn't play out, then it doesn't play out, and I need to exit. Right? If things play out, then cool. I need to be patient, because again, structure is telling me that, you know what, we're still valid for this push up or for this push down. But yeah, so right now I'm pretty much gonna be breaking down AJ. We still got a couple hours, 2 hours before it opens. So we'll see how this kind of plays out. But yeah, so far good for the week. It's barely Monday, going into Tuesday. So let's see how this plays out.